Hi everyone, I'm Paul with MadCap Software, and I'm going to talk about building output in MadCap Central. So first of all, I'm going to go through what do you need to do to get yourself set up, and then I'll talk about building output manually and point some things out, some stuff to watch for. I'll talk about scheduling builds so you can do this automatically. And I will also get into publishing or building output directly from Flare. So that's what we have ahead. Let's get to it. Now, before you generate any output, you got to make sure that you're allowed to. First of all, you got to go to your projects page, and whatever project you want to build output from, you got to be associated with it. So I'm going to work all the way down here with this Module 9 project, and I look over here under users. That's my avatar. I know I'm associated with it because I created the project. But if I weren't associated with the project, I could give myself access just by going into my profile, click on access and edit. I can associate myself with any team, any projects in there. So you can be associated with the project just individually or through a team or both. And I'm good right here. So the other thing you got to do is you got to make sure you have permissions. So when you go into your profile and permissions, you're going to see all these builds permissions in here. So just select whichever ones that you want. And what we're really going to do today is we're going to run and schedule builds. So I've got that permission. We're all set up, so let's get into generating some output. So let's build some output. I'm going to open up my project right there, and I'm going to go to the Builds tab. And now all I need to do is click Create Build. This is going to take me through a wizard. Now, the first thing that you need to select is a branch. And if you don't know anything about branching, you should look into it. It's really great. It allows you to do different things like set up variations of your project in different states of development, or you can create translation branches. Even if you haven't done any branching, you're going to have a branch, and it's going to be called the master branch. That would be the only one you have in there. I have multiple branches. I have a couple of feature branches. I have a couple of translation branches in here. And you just need to select which one you want to build output from. So let's say I want to build output from the feature 2 branch. So I select that. Now, if you want to learn more about branching, I have a separate video. I'll put a link to it in the description. Go ahead and check that out. So now you got to tell Central which target you want to build. Well, I have several targets in this particular project. I've got a PDF there. I've got online help. I've got another PDF. I've got some Kleenex HTML. I've got a Word target. I'm just going to select this online help target right there, which is HTML5. Click Next. Now I can add additional translation branches in here if I have them, and I want to create multilingual output. I'm not going to do it in this video, but I have a separate video all about translation. If you're into that, go check that out. Click Next, gives me a summary. Click Build. So now this row comes up. And so if you're used to using MadCap Flare, this kind of looks similar. In Flare, it by default opens at the bottom of the page. Here you just get a row right here, and it's working through the build. Now, some things to point out while we're waiting for this to build. You're going to get an ID in here, which is something that you would be interested in if you end up creating sites to publish your output, make it accessible to end users. You have all of these columns of information in here, and you can click here and select which ones you want to show and which ones you want to hide. So scroll over here, you can see that it's complete. And I know because the dark green bar right there, this shows that I am the one who generated it. I generated it in Central. Now, some of the things I would watch for whenever you're generating a build are these error and warnings columns. You ideally don't want anything in there that's causing your build to be bad or to not build altogether. So if I had something like that, I would open up my log to take a look. And you got this 3-dot menu, and I can select right here to open up the log and see what happened. So now that my build is done, I can click, you see that little down arrow right there? I could click there, or I could just click in some white space in here, and it expands the row. So I've got this private URL right here. And if I had this build hooked up to a site over here so that it was published and people could see it, I would see a URL right there. So I can just click right there to open up output and see how it looks. So let's build another target. I'm going to open this. Let's stick with the feature 2 branch. This time I will do this getting started guide PDF. Click next. Not going to do languages. Click next. Click build. All right, so this one finished building and I can move over here. Oh, good. No errors, no warnings. I can collapse this row and I can expand that row and look at that output. Now I did show briefly this 3-dot menu. You can click on any of these builds and you can select several things. The profile, you can look at the output, the log, so on. The other thing you can do is you can select the checkboxes next to things, and like that. You can do it for multiple builds, and maybe you want to use this to delete builds that you don't need anymore. So building output manually, really, really easy. So now let's talk about scheduling builds, which is really, really great because you can set things up so that builds automatically happen sometime in the future and they can be recurring, whatever you want. I use this for internal output, internal private output. Every night it just builds these things automatically so my coworkers can get the latest output of what's coming next in these products. So you can do something like that. Right now we're on the Builds tab. We just click here and go over to Schedules. So it's kind of the same thing as building manually. You click here and you're going to go through a wizard. So some of the same options in here. It remembered my last settings in here and I can change anything I want. So maybe I want to set this to master. We're going to build off of that branch and I want to select knowledge base. Click next. Not going to add languages. Click next. Now, I tell it, when do I want this thing to build? I can do it every day of the week, or I could do it maybe Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It's up to you. The time, you can just click in here and type, or you can click here and make a selection. So maybe I want to do 1:30 a.m. What time zone? I'll just click here and come down. I'm going to select my time zone, which is Pacific. Now this option right here is automatically selected, and that's probably what you want. You probably don't want it to just keep building, creating builds if there are no changes from the last time you built. Otherwise, you're just going to end up with a ton of rows in there. You can deselect that if you want, but I'd recommend that you just keep this selected. Click Next, gives you a summary, and click Create. So now I get this row in here. And again, it's got a lot of columns in here, which you can control right there. And whenever that day and time hits in the future, it's just going to automatically kick off a build, and you'll see it in this tab. One of the really cool things that you can do with builds on Central is you can initiate those builds from Flare. So first of all, that project that you have open in Flare, in this case, Module 9, you got to make sure that it is bound to Central. So on the View ribbon, you select MadCap Central. That's what I have open here. You can tell that it's bound because all this stuff is populated. And you can see my avatar up here. I am logged in. So I have this target right here, online help. It's an HTML5 target, got it open. And I want to build this, but I want it to show up automatically on Central on that builds page. So no problem. Because I'm bound, I can come in here in my target and select publishing. And you can create destinations for all kinds of purposes. But because you're bound to Central, you don't have to create one. It just shows up. And all you do is click that thing right there and save. Now, it's important to keep the terms straight. There's build and there's publish. What do those mean? Well, when we say publish here, yeah, we're building the output and we're publishing it, but it doesn't mean we're making it accessible to an external audience or anything. On Central, you do that with sites. All this means, all publish means is, all right, we're building the output, and then publishing means we're making a copy of that and putting it up on Central. So if you actually wanted to publish on Central, you'd create a site and connect that build to it. So just keep those terms straight. So let's build and publish this thing from Flare. I can click build and it'll build, and then I can click publish, or I can just do one. I can just click publish and it says, hey, you don't have any generated output yet. Do you want to generate it? Sure. Click yes. So it opens up the Builds tab here in Flare, and it's going to go through this. And if I move things, you're going to see all of these columns in here. So it built it, and now it's publishing it. It's pushing it up to Central. And once it's done, everything is green. I don't have any warnings. I don't have any errors. I just have some ignored warnings, and I'm not worried about those. So it's all done. So let's go into Central. Now in Central, I see this additional row. Before, I just had these two right here. It added this one. And if I move over to the right, you're going to see a difference here. Now, the first two builds I did manually, they have these central icons on them because that means I built these up on Central. This has a Flare icon, which means the build originated from Flare. So you can use this feature just for convenience, but there's another reason to use it. If you go into the online help, you're going to see this topic called Flare features not supported in MadCap Central. So Flare's been around for a couple of decades, and there are tons and tons of features in there, and there are a handful that just aren't supported up on Central when you build on Central, and you can see the list there. But there are a few of these which will be supported if you originate that build from Flare. So for example, Elasticsearch or pre and post build events. If those are important to you, well, then build and publish from Flare, get that thing up on Central, and you'll have those features. And that's building in MadCap Central. Thanks for watching. Talk to you next time.